Being useful is not enough. Useful men get called when someone needs help. Valuable men get paid before they move. That is the difference most men never learn. You help, you fix, you answer, you rescue, you make yourself available. Then you wonder why people need you but do not respect you. The truth is colder. They do not value you less because you are useless. They value you less because your usefulness is too easy to access. Machiavelli would not ask whether you are helpful. He would ask, who controls the terms of your help? Bill Gates did not become powerful by simply being useful to IBM. Microsoft supplied an operating system for the IBM personal computer, but the deeper power was not the service itself. Microsoft retained the rights to MS-DOS and licensed it to other manufacturers. The useful man would have solved the problem once. The strategic man controlled the asset behind the solution. Warren Buffett did not rescue Goldman Sachs for free during the crisis of 2008. Berkshire Hathaway invested $5 billion through preferred stock with a 10% dividend and warrants. His capital was useful, but it came with terms. Two different worlds. Same law. Do not become endlessly available. Become necessary with conditions. Because if people can access your value without cost, without proof, without scarcity, without timing, and without terms, they will not see value. They will see access. And access without terms is the beginning of being used. This is not about becoming selfish. It is not about becoming cruel. It is not about pretending you are too important for people. That is childish. This is about understanding the difference between being needed and having power. A man does not become powerful because people need him. He becomes powerful when people need what he controls. Most men never learn this because they are trained to believe that usefulness will eventually be rewarded. They think if they work hard enough, help enough, explain enough, support enough, and prove their loyalty enough, the world will finally recognize them. But reality is colder than that. Reality does not automatically reward hidden value. Reality rewards visible value. Reality rewards structured value. Reality rewards scarce value. Reality rewards value that has consequences attached to it. This is why a man can be useful for years and still remain invisible. He can be the one people call when something breaks. He can be the one who gives the advice. He can be the one who solves the emergency. He can be the one who stays late, answers fast, explains patiently, carries the burden, and protects everyone else from consequences. And still, when money is distributed, he is passed over. When status is given, he is forgotten. When credit is assigned, someone louder takes it. When opportunity appears, someone more visible receives it. That is the wound behind this video. You are not always ignored because you have no value. Sometimes you are ignored because your value has no structure. It has no boundary, no price, no proof, no terms, no container, no visible consequence if people lose access to it. So people consume it casually. They do not feel the cost of your time because you never made your time costly. They do not respect the weight of your skill because you never made the skill visible. They do not honor your loyalty because they have received it without earning it. They do not protect your attention because you hand it out every time someone interrupts you, and then you call it betrayal when, in truth, part of the system was built by your own availability. That is the hard correction. The question is not only why people use you. The better question is, where did you make your value too easy to use? If you understand this, the entire game changes. A useful man asks, how can I help? A strategic man asks, what do I provide, and under what terms can it be accessed? A useful man gives first and hopes to be valued later. A strategic man defines value before access is granted. A useful man wants to be seen as good. A strategic man wants his value to be understood, protected, and respected. A useful man is emotionally rewarded by being needed. A strategic man is structurally rewarded because his value has boundaries. This is the difference between demand and value. Usefulness creates demand. Boundaries create value. If you are watching this and you have ever been the man people come to only when they need something, then pay attention. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment the word terms if you are done being available without structure. Not because the algorithm needs it, because you need to make a public decision that the old pattern is over. Most men are not trapped because they lack ability. They are trapped because their ability leaks everywhere. At work, he accepts extra tasks without negotiation. With friends, he becomes the unpaid therapist, planner, fixer, driver, advisor, or emergency resource. With family, he becomes the one who can be interrupted, guilted, and expected to adjust. With clients, he gives strategy before commitment. Online, he explains everything for free, then wonders why nobody buys. In business, he gives ideas but builds no asset. In his career, he solves problems, but documents no proof. In his private life, he gives loyalty but creates no standard for access. Then he becomes tired, useful, bitter, needed, invisible. This is not strength, this is leakage. And a man who leaks value everywhere eventually begins to resent the same people he taught to access him cheaply. That is why resentment alone is not intelligence. Resentment tells you where the wound is. Strategy tells you what to change. The available man says, "Tell me what you need." The strategic man says, "Here is what I provide under these terms." The available man thinks saying yes will make him valuable. The strategic man understands that a man who never says no teaches the world that his yes has no weight. The available man is afraid boundaries will make people leave. The strategic man studies who leaves when the access road is closed. Because resistance is data. Some people respected you only because your value was cheap. Some people praised your loyalty only because your loyalty had no cost. Some people called you dependable only because they could depend on you without giving anything back. That is not always love. Sometimes it is convenience, wearing the language of appreciation. And if you do not learn this early, you can lose years inside the wrong identity. You become the reliable one, but not the promoted one, the helpful one, but not the respected one, the loyal one, but not the protected one, the skilled one, but not the paid one, the needed one, but not the chosen one. This is one of the most humiliating contradictions an ambitious man can face. People need him, but they do not rank him highly. They trust him with labor, but not with authority. They seek his advice in private, but do not give him credit in public. They use his competence, but do not attach status to his name. They know he will show up, but they do not fear losing him. And that last part matters. People often protect what they fear losing. If your value is always present, always free, always patient, always forgiving, always available, then nobody has to calculate the cost of losing it. Your value becomes like electricity in a room. Everyone uses it. Nobody thanks it. Nobody thinks about it. Nobody respects the system behind it. Until the power goes out. That is what happens to the over-available man. He becomes infrastructure. Important but unseen. Necessary but not elevated. Used but not honored. The solution is not to disappear like a wounded child. The solution is to install structure like a man who owns his value. If people can use your value without respecting your terms, you are useful, but you are not powerful. This is where Bill Gates becomes more than a business example. He becomes a law. IBM needed an operating system for its personal computer. Microsoft became useful. But usefulness was not the power move. The power move was retaining rights and licensing the system beyond IBM. The Computer History Museum has noted that Microsoft recognized the value of owning and licensing the operating system to makers of IBM-compatible computers. That recognition mattered because the real wealth was not in solving one problem for one company. The real wealth was in controlling the mechanism that other companies would need again and again. If Microsoft had simply handed over the value would have ended with one client. But because Microsoft controlled the rights, the usefulness scaled. IBM needed the solution. Microsoft controlled the asset behind the solution. That is the difference between service and leverage. Most men live like one-time service providers. They solve the problem but own nothing. They help someone succeed but capture no proof. They give advice but document nothing. They do work but build no asset. They give time but create no process. They become useful to a boss, a client, a friend, a family member, or a company, but once the task is done, the value disappears. Then they wonder why they feel replaceable. They are replaceable because their value is not attached to anything they control. A man becomes harder to replace when his value is attached to a system, a process, a reputation, a distribution channel, a portfolio, a body of work, a trusted result, a rare skill, a documented method, an offer, a network, or intellectual property. Do not only provide value, control the mechanism that produces value. That is the law. Bill Gates did not become powerful because he was helpful once. Microsoft became powerful because usefulness was converted into rights, licensing, and scalable control. Now take that out of technology and place it into your own life. If your boss depends on you to solve repeated problems, where is the proof that you solved them? If clients keep asking you the same questions, where is the offer that turns your answer into a paid structure? If people come to you for advice, where is the guide, consultation, process, or boundary that protects your time? If your family expects automatic help, where are the limits that define what you can and cannot do? If your friends use you for emotional support, where is the standard that separates real connection from endless draining access? If the market cannot see your value, where is the public proof? If your value lives only inside your effort, it can be consumed and forgotten. If your value becomes visible, documented, structured, and controlled, it becomes leverage. Machiavelli understood this at the level of power. He was not a motivational writer. He was a man who studied what people do under pressure. In The Prince, he writes, "The real truth of the matter is more useful than the imagination of it." That is the foundation here. Not what people should respect, not what loyalty should earn, not what kindness should produce. The real truth is colder. People respond to incentives, visibility, scarcity, structure, reputation, and consequence. They do not automatically honor invisible sacrifice. They do not automatically reward quiet competence. They do not automatically promote the man who absorbed the most pain. They often reward the man whose value is easiest to see, hardest to replace, and most costly to ignore. This may offend the part of you that wants the world to be fair. Good. That part of you has probably kept you waiting too long. The world does not owe you recognition because you suffered privately. The market does not pay for your exhaustion. People do not always understand what you gave up. Your family may not understand what your ambition costs. Your employer may not calculate how much chaos you prevent. Your clients may not value what you never named. Your friends may not notice the emotional energy you spend on them. Hidden value is often treated like non-existent value. That is not justice. It is reality. And reality is not defeated by complaining about it. Reality is defeated by building proof. This is where the old identity has to break. The old identity says, if I keep being useful, they will finally value me. The strategic identity says, I must make my usefulness visible, scarce, and conditional. The old identity says, they should know how much I do. The strategic identity says, I must make the value legible enough to be respected. The old identity says, I hope they notice. The strategic identity says, I will build evidence they cannot easily ignore. One is resentment, the other is command. But controlling value is not always about software, rights, or ownership. Sometimes the colder move is simpler. It is terms. Warren Buffett shows this with brutal clarity. During the financial crisis of 2008, Goldman Sachs needed capital and credibility. Warren Buffett had both. But he did not arrive as a generous rescuer handing over value for applause. Berkshire Hathaway invested $5 billion in Goldman Sachs, preferred shares paying a 10% annual dividend. Berkshire also received warrants to buy another $5 billion of common stock. His value was useful, but it was not casual. It arrived with structure. Capital was one part of the value. Confidence was another. Buffett's name itself carried weight. His involvement sent a signal to the market. But the point is not that Buffett helped. The point is that help came with terms, preferred shares, dividend, warrants, conditions, defined upside, structured access. That is strategic usefulness. Now compare that to the ordinary useful man. Someone asks for help. He drops everything. Someone needs advice. He gives an hour. Someone has a problem. He fixes it. Someone wants access. He replies instantly. Someone wants free work. He says yes because he wants to be seen as good. Someone asks for just one quick thing. He agrees, even though quick things have consumed half his life. Then he wonders why usefulness does not produce wealth, status, or respect. Because his usefulness arrived without terms. Help without terms makes you available. Help with terms makes you strategic. Terms do not make a man immoral. Terms make value visible. Price is a term. Time is a term. Scope is a term. Credit is a term. Payment is a term. Access is a term. A deadline is a term. A response window is a term. A minimum commitment is a term. A written agreement is a term. Without terms, value becomes emotional charity. With terms, value becomes power. Machiavelli writes in The Prince, there is nothing wastes so rapidly as liberality. In its original context, he was warning rulers that uncontrolled generosity can destroy their resources and make them despised or dependent. But the modern lesson is clear. Uncontrolled giving drains the source of your value. A man who gives everything to be liked eventually loses the power to keep giving. Then he becomes resentful. Then he becomes weak. Then he calls his exhaustion loyalty because he does not want to admit he failed to govern access to himself. Boundaries protect the source. A man who cannot protect the source of his value cannot become powerful, no matter how useful he is. Because power is not only what you give. Power is what you can continue to produce because you did not let everyone drain the source. That is the next correction. You do not need to become colder. You need to become clearer. You do not need to stop helping. You need to stop helping in ways that destroy your position. You do not need to become selfish. You need to stop using generosity as a way to beg for respect. The man who helps without structure is often not as noble as he thinks. Sometimes he is afraid. Afraid to set a price. Afraid to define scope. Afraid to disappoint. Afraid to lose access. Afraid to be judged. Afraid that if he stops being constantly useful, people will discover they never valued him. That fear is the chain, and until he breaks it, he will keep mistaking availability for virtue. That fear is the chain, and the chain is not broken by becoming angry. It is broken by changing the access rule. Machiavelli gives us the next mechanism. People judge what they can see far more often than what they can deeply understand. In The Prince, he writes, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. Everyone can see appearances. Few come close enough to inspect inner reality. This explains why useful men remain invisible. People cannot see your private sacrifice. They cannot measure all the opportunities you gave up. They do not automatically calculate the cost of your attention. They do not understand how much energy it took to solve the problem. They do not see the nights you spent learning the skill. They do not see the pressure you carried while staying calm. They do not see how many times you protected them from consequences they never had to face. They see results. They see leverage. They see reputation. They see scarcity. They see boundaries. They see proof. They see whether other people respect you. They see whether your time appears costly. They see whether access to you is governed. This is not about faking importance. A weak man reads Machiavelli and thinks appearance means deception. A stronger man understands the deeper lesson. Turn reality into visible evidence. Do not fake value. Document value. Do not fake scarcity. Control access. Do not fake expertise. Build proof. Do not fake status. Create results that make status rational. Do not fake confidence. Let evidence make confidence stable. This is where many men lose the game. They want to be discovered. They want someone to notice how much they do. They want their private ability to be magically recognized by people who have no reason to study them that closely. But hidden value is often treated as non-existent value. That sentence may offend you, but it can also free you. Because the moment you stop expecting the world to honor invisible value, you stop waiting to be recognized and start building evidence. A portfolio is evidence. A case study is evidence. A testimonial is evidence. A measurable result is evidence. A public body of work is evidence. A clear offer is evidence. A documented process is evidence. A price is evidence. A boundary is evidence. A man with no visible proof is easy to dismiss, even when he is talented. A man with proof becomes harder to ignore because now the world has something concrete to judge. This is why the useful man must stop hiding inside effort. Effort is not enough. Effort that cannot be seen can be stolen. Effort that cannot be measured can be minimized. Effort that cannot be connected to an outcome can be forgotten. Effort that does not create proof keeps you dependent on someone else's generosity. And depending on generosity is dangerous when you are dealing with people who respond to incentives. The man who says, "They should know how much I do," is still thinking like a child waiting for fairness. The man who says, "I will make the value visible," is thinking like someone who understands power. One waits to be understood. The other builds proof. One complains about being overlooked. The other makes being overlooked more expensive. That is the transition. Invisible value is consumed. Visible value is negotiated. What becomes visible can be priced. What can be priced can be negotiated. What can be negotiated can become leverage. And leverage is the difference between being used and being respected. But visible value is not enough if every person can access it whenever they want. This is the next enemy: excessive availability. Why do people start taking useful men for granted? Because repeated easy access lowers perceived cost. If you always answer, your attention feels cheap. If you always help, your labor becomes expected. If you always explain, your knowledge feels free. If you always rescue, your loyalty becomes assumed. If you always adjust, your boundaries become invisible. The useful man thinks he is building respect. Often he is building entitlement. This is how a man becomes used. not through one dramatic betrayal, not through one obvious enemy, not through one cruel person who announces his intentions. It happens through repeated access without terms, one extra task, one free favor, one long explanation, one late-night rescue, one unpaid consultation, one quick question, one small adjustment, one moment where you ignore your own standard because you want to avoid tension. Over time, people learn the access rule. He will probably say yes. That rule becomes your reputation, and reputation becomes the cage. Once people know you as the man who always says yes, your no begins to feel like betrayal to them. Not because you betrayed them, but because you interrupted the system they enjoyed. That is when you learn who respected you and who only respected the convenience of you. A man who cannot govern access to himself cannot govern his future. If every person can enter your attention whenever they want, you do not rule your attention. They do. If every request becomes urgent, you do not control your time. They do. If every need receives immediate access, you do not control your value. They do. This is not arrogance. It is command. What has no boundary becomes public property. Your time needs boundaries. Your attention needs boundaries. Your skill needs boundaries. Your labor needs boundaries. Your loyalty needs boundaries. Your emotional energy needs boundaries. Otherwise, people will keep taking. Not always because they are monsters, but because you built the access road and never installed a gate. This is the part most men resist. They say, "I do not want to become cold." You do not need to become cold. You need to become clear. They say, "I want to help people." Then help better. Unstructured help often trains dependence. Structured help creates results. They say, "I do not want to seem selfish." But a man who destroys his own capacity through endless availability eventually becomes resentful, unstable, and unreliable. That is not generosity. That is generosity without governance. And generosity without governance becomes weakness. The available man leaks value. The strategic man compounds value. The available man gives in fragments. Advice here, labor there, attention here, emotional support there. He is always moving but rarely accumulating leverage. The strategic man converts value into assets. A case study, a paid offer, a process, a portfolio, a documented result, a repeatable system, a reputation for outcomes, a boundary that protects energy, a price that filters unserious people. This is not about refusing to serve. It is about serving without reducing your rank. Machiavelli understood that a ruler could encourage commerce, skill, and contribution while still maintaining the dignity of his position. The modern application is simple. Contribute value, help people, create outcomes. But do not erase the boundary that makes your value respected. Stop being easy to use. Become difficult to replace. That sentence is not motivational. It is operational. Difficult to replace means you control something others need. Access, timing, pricing, distribution, a rare skill, a trusted process, a reputation, intellectual property, proof, decision rights, a market channel, a specific result, a network, a standard. A man becomes necessary when others need something he controls, not something he randomly gives, not something he provides from guilt, not something available at any hour, something controlled. If you are needed but control nothing, people can use you and still replace you. They can extract your time, absorb your ideas, use your energy, borrow your loyalty, benefit from your work, then move on. But when you control the mechanism, the relationship changes. People cannot only ask, "Can you help?" They must ask, what are the terms? That question creates status, not because you are pretending to be superior, because your value now has structure. And structure teaches people how to treat you. This is why the available man and the strategic man live in different worlds. The available man says, "Tell me what you need." The strategic man says, "Here is what I provide under these terms." The available man waits to be valued after giving. The strategic man defines value before access. The available man wants approval. The strategic man wants position. The available man gives because being needed soothes his insecurity. The strategic man gives from strength because his access is governed. The available man asks, "Do they like me?" The strategic man asks, "Does this exchange respect my value?" That is not cruelty. That is adulthood in power. Now the question becomes practical. Where are you over-available? Do not answer with everything. That is how weak men avoid responsibility. They make the problem so large that they never act. Choose one area: work, friends, family, clients, business, career, online audience, personal life. Choose the place where your availability creates the most resentment. That resentment points to the leak. If you resent your workplace, maybe they are accessing your labor without credit, ownership, or negotiation. If you resent your friends, maybe they are accessing your attention without reciprocity. If you resent your family, maybe they are accessing your time through guilt. If you resent clients, maybe they are accessing your strategy before commitment. If you resent your audience, maybe you are giving everything away without building an offer, proof, asset, or boundary. Resentment is not the final answer, it is the signal. Once you identify the leak, name the unpaid value. What do people benefit from but not properly value? Advice, labor, problem solving, emotional support, technical skill, creative work, strategy, connections, planning, execution, judgment, loyalty, time. You cannot protect vague value. You cannot price what you cannot name. You cannot defend what you have not defined. A man who says, "I do a lot," will be dismissed. A man who says, "I solve this specific problem, produce this specific outcome, and require these specific terms," becomes harder to manipulate. Specificity is protection. After you name the value, attach one boundary, not 10. 1. Price. Time limit, scope limit, written terms, clear offer, access rule, response window, minimum commitment, proof of seriousness. Simple language is enough. I can help, but only within this scope. Send the details first, then I will decide. This is the offer, this is the price, this is the timeline. I do not take unpaid strategy calls. I reply during this window. That is outside the agreement. I can do this, but not that. I need the decision in writing. I need the deadline, ownership, and credit defined first. Boundary does not mean hostility. Boundary means the value has a container. Without a container, your value spills everywhere. And what spills everywhere gets treated like it has no cost. Then you build visible proof. Your value must become visible. Build one proof asset: a portfolio, a case study, a testimonial, a sales page, a published piece of work, a skill demonstration, a before and after result, a measurable outcome, a documented process, a client result, a public body of work. If you have no proof, you are forcing the world to believe you on faith. And faith is a weak strategy when you are dealing with status, money, opportunity, and power. Proof turns private ability into public leverage. Then reduce casual access. Ask yourself, who gets access to me without earning it? Then reduce free explanations. reduce instant replies, reduce unpaid labor, reduce emotional overgiving, reduce vague favors, reduce low-value requests, reduce access without reciprocity, reduce conversations that create no action. The goal is not to disappear. The goal is to make access meaningful. If people want your value, they should approach it with seriousness, not entitlement, not vagueness, not emotional pressure, not casual extraction, seriousness. Then convert repeated help into terms. If people ask for advice often, create a paid consultation, a written guide, or a clear time boundary. If co-workers dump tasks on you, define ownership, deadline, and credit. If clients keep expanding scope, create a change fee. If friends ask for constant emotional access, define when you are available and what kind of conversation you are willing to carry. If family expects automatic help, define what you can do and what you cannot do. If an audience asks the same questions again and again, build content, a resource, or an offer that answers them at scale. The question is not, how do I help less? The better question is, how do I stop letting help destroy my position? That is the center of value without availability. You are not trying to become less useful. You are trying to make usefulness stronger. Useful with boundaries becomes respected. Useful with proof becomes credible. Useful with pricing becomes profitable. Useful with scarcity becomes desired. Useful with control becomes leverage. This is where the old belief dies. You do not become valuable by being endlessly useful. You become valuable by making your usefulness visible, scarce, measurable, and conditional. You stop being the man everyone can use. You become the man they cannot easily replace. And this shift must be practiced in small moments, not speeches, not dramatic announcements, not emotional declarations. Small moments. When someone asks for free advice, you define the container. When someone expands the scope, you name the limit. When someone interrupts your attention, you protect the window. When someone uses guilt, you refuse to negotiate with emotional pressure. When someone wants your labor, you clarify terms. When someone benefits from your work, you document proof. When someone expects instant access, you slow the response. When someone resists your boundary, you study the resistance. Resistance is data. Some people will respect you more when you define terms. Some people will reveal that they only valued the discount. Do not be shocked. Be informed. The moment access changes, relationships reveal their structure. This is why weak men fear boundaries. Boundaries expose truth. And some men would rather remain used than face the truth of who was benefiting from their weakness. But power requires that exposure. You cannot become strategic while protecting every illusion. If you are the right man for this channel, stop confusing consumption with progress. You already know you need discipline, leverage, proof, and stronger boundaries. But your real problem is that you keep giving value in ways that do not build power. If you keep handing out your time, strategy, attention, and effort without structure, you will become useful to everyone except your future self. Inside Patreon, you get direct, unfiltered material designed to help you build proof, control access, sharpen your strategy, and turn private ambition into visible leverage. This is not for men who want comfort. It is for men who are done being available without becoming powerful. The decision is yours. Now understand the final law. People do not use you only because they are cruel. Sometimes they use you because your system allowed it. That sentence is not meant to shame you. It is meant to return control to you. If the problem is only other people, you can only complain. If the problem includes your access rule, your proof, your boundaries, your terms, and your visibility, then you can change the system. That is power. The victim asks, why do they keep using me? The strategist asks, what did my structure permit? The victim asks, why do they not see my value? The strategist asks, where is the proof? The victim asks, why do they not respect my time? The strategist asks, what access rule taught them my time was cheap? The victim asks, why do they only call when they need me? The strategist asks, what terms would make that access serious? This is not emotional comfort. This is command. You cannot control every person. You cannot control every judgment. You cannot control every betrayal. You cannot control whether people are fair. But you can control how visible your value becomes. You can control what access costs. You can control what you document. You can control what you price. You can control your response window. You can control your scope. You can control your proof. You can control whether help remains random or becomes structured. And over time, the man who controls these things becomes different. He speaks differently. He negotiates differently. He carries himself differently. He no longer begs people to understand his value. He makes the value visible. He no longer gives from fear. He gives from position. He no longer treats every request as a command. He treats access as something governed. He no longer confuses being needed with being respected. He studies the terms. That is the transformation. From available to strategic, from useful to valuable, from hidden effort to visible proof, from emotional giving to structured contribution, from resentment to architecture, from being consumed to being necessary. The useful man gets called when someone has a problem. The valuable man is considered before the problem becomes urgent. The useful man solves emergencies. The valuable man controls the system that prevents them. The useful man gives answers. The valuable man owns the process. The useful man is thanked. The valuable man is paid, protected, credited, and retained. The useful man hopes people will notice. The valuable man leaves evidence. Do not misunderstand this. You should still help. You should still create value. You should still serve. But never again confuse service with surrender. Never again confuse loyalty with self-erasure. Never again confuse generosity with uncontrolled access. Never again confuse being needed with being powerful. Being needed can become a trap if need does not come with respect. Respect becomes more likely when value has proof, scarcity, terms, and consequence. That is why Gates mattered. He did not only solve the problem, he controlled rights. That is why Buffett mattered. He did not only provide capital, he attached terms. That is why Machiavelli still matters. He did not ask what people should honor. He studied what people actually respond to. And what people respond to is often colder than what you hoped. They respond to visible power. They respond to scarcity. They respond to proof. They respond to controlled access. They respond to the cost of losing what you provide. So stop trying to become valuable by being endlessly useful. Useful men get used when their value has no boundary. Rich men become necessary because they control access to what others need. Complete the diagnostic. Identify where you are over-available. Name the value people consume too easily. Attach one boundary, build one proof asset. Reduce casual access. Convert repeated help into terms. Track the reaction. Then repeat. Do this at work. Do this with clients. Do this with your audience. Do this with friends. Do this with family. Do this with yourself. Because the first person who must respect your value is you. If you treat your own attention as cheap, do not be shocked when others follow your example. If you treat your own time as unlimited, do not be shocked when others spend it for you. If you treat your own skill as free, do not be shocked when others fail to price it. If you treat your own loyalty as automatic, Do not be shocked when others stop earning it. The world studies how you handle yourself. Then it negotiates accordingly. So change the lesson. Let people learn that your help has structure. Let them learn that your time has a gate. Let them learn that your skill has proof. Let them learn that your access requires seriousness. Let them learn that your loyalty is strong, but not stupid. Let them learn that your value is available to the right people under the right terms for the right reasons. That is not selfish. That is self-command. And self-command is the beginning of power. If this video forced you to see where your value is being consumed too easily, like it, subscribe to the channel, and write one boundary you will set this week. Do not write a fantasy, write the specific boundary. Price, time, scope, access, proof. Choose one and make it real. The man who waits to be valued remains dependent on the judgment of others. The man who structures his value changes the terms of the judgment. So stop asking why people use you. Ask where you made your value too easy to access. Then close the gate, build the proof, set the terms, and become the man they cannot replace.